It's me, Miss Norris, and today I'd like to share a fun read aloud of the story Curious George's First Day of School. Curious George's First Day of School was written in 2005 by Margret and HA Rey, and if you're ready to hear the story, I'm ready to share it with you. Here we go. Curious George's First Day of School. I'll get a little closer so you can see that cover. It says, "Welcome to your first day of school." Could you imagine starting your first day of school and there was a monkey in your class? Ooh. And here's Curious George and his friend, the man with the yellow hat. A little picture of the school. This is George. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. Today, George was so excited he could barely eat his breakfast. "You have a big day ahead of you, George," said his friend, the man with the yellow hat. So George is very curious and very excited. You can see he's eating breakfast and he has his lunchbox ready for school. It was a big day for George. It was the first day of school, and he had been invited to be a special helper. George and his friend walked together to the schoolyard. Some of the children were nervous, but George could not wait for the fun to begin. In the classroom, George's friend introduced him to Mr. Apple. "Thank you for inviting George to school today," said the man with the yellow hat. Then he waved goodbye. "Have a good day, George. I'll be back to pick you up after school." So George is coming to be a very special helper. And even though there's some kids that are nervous, George is not. And the teacher's name is Mr. Apple, and he's excited to have George at school with them. The children were excited to have a monkey in class. "George is going to be our special helper," Mr. Apple told them. And what a helper he was. At story time, George held the book. At math time, the children could count on George. So you see that George is meeting the kids and he's helping. Hold the book, lending some fingers to count. And at recess, George made sure everyone had a ball and a well-balanced snack. After lunch, Mr. Apple got out paints and brushes. George saw red, yellow, and blue paint. 3 colors were not very many. George was curious. Could he help make more colors? So they had a great time at recess. Everyone had a ball and a snack. And then after recess, after lunch, they were gonna paint. You can see there was only 3 colors. But our curious little monkey wants to know if he can make more colors. First, George mixed red and blue to make purple. Now, George mixed red and yellow to make orange. Then, George mixed yellow and blue to make green. Finally, George mixed all the colors to make dun dun dun. So before we find out what happens, we can see that George has been mixing colors. Red, yellow, and blue are primary colors, and when you mix them, you can make purple, orange, and green. Those are secondary colors because they are made by mixing 2 other colors. But when he mixed them all together, it made a big mess. The children thought the mess was funny, but Mr. Apple did not. "Oh dear," he said. "We're going to need something to clean this up. Everyone, please sit quietly while I look." So George made a big mess, and everyone has to sit down so that they can clean up the big mess. I don't know if those kids are going to be so happy to have a monkey anymore. George did not mean to make such a big mess, and he certainly did not want to sit quietly. He wanted to help. It was his job, after all. George had an idea. In the hallway, George found a closet. In the closet, he found a bucket. In the bucket, he found just what was needed. So what do you think it is that they need to clean this big mess up that could be in a closet, in a bucket? That's right, a mop. So you can see George is riding in that mop bucket and he's having a great time. George was on his way back to the classroom when he heard somebody yell, "Stop! Stop! What are you doing with my mop?" The janitor ran after George. "Stop! Stop! No running in the halls!" The principal ran after the janitor. But George was going too fast to stop. He grabbed the doorway and swung inside, and so we have the janitor saying, "Hey, where are you going with my mop?" And we have the principal saying, "Hey, there's no running in the halls. Hey, that's a rule at our school." And George was going too fast to stop. But he swung into the room and splash! The bucket tipped, the mop dropped, and George slid across the floor. Now the mess was even bigger. Mr. Apple looked surprised. The principal frowned. The janitor just shook his head. And George, poor George, he felt terrible. Maybe he was not such a good helper after all. So everything fell out of the bucket, and you can see it made a huge mess. The principal's angry. The janitor's shaking his head. Mr. Apple is disappointed. And George, he feels bad. He's supposed to be the helper, and he doesn't feel like he's helping do anything but make a mess. The children felt terrible too. They did not like to see George looking so sad. They thought he was a great helper. Now they wanted to help him. So the children all lent a hand and some feet. So you can see the whole class is working together to clean up that mess. And before anyone knew it, the mess was gone. "That little monkey sure is helpful," the janitor said. "It looks like Mr. Apple has a whole class full of helpers," the principal added. At the end of the day, when George's friend arrived to pick him up, Mr. Apple said, "Thank you for all your help, George. We hope you'll come and help us again." The children cheered. They hoped George would come again too. So at the end of the day, everything went pretty good, and they said, "Hey, the monkey's pretty good, but you got a lot of helpers, Mr. Apple. What a great class." And Mr. Apple said, "You can come back, George." George waved goodbye to his new friends. What a great day it had been. He could not wait to come back to school. The end. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you really enjoyed Curious George's first day of school. If you did, please hit that thumbs up button at the bottom of the page. If you are already a subscriber, thank you so much for your support. It really means a lot to me. If you're not a subscriber yet, please click the subscribe button down here at the bottom of the page. And don't forget to click the bell so that you're notified when there's new content. I hope to see you all again real soon. Bye-bye.